Hi, ladies. Welcome to Beautiful Bible Studies. We are in our first week in the book of Ruth. So hopefully this week you've had a chance to read through chapter 1 of the book of Ruth. That's what we'll be talking about today. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, we are going to be looking at this book from the aspect of friendship. Now, I realize that Naomi and Ruth have a relationship beyond your average friendship, right? They're actually in-laws. And I think coming from a culture where the relationship between, especially between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, is often mocked and minimized, I think this is a refreshing and lovely view of what the potential is that to the kind of relationships that we can have when we view others through a godly perspective. So I hope that you've had a chance to get into the Word this week, and I'm looking forward to talking and thinking this through with you. My first question for you is, what do you think of the book of Ruth so far? Leave a comment and let me know. I'd love to hear about your thoughts, anything that stood out to you, or the way that God spoke to you through His Word this week. Share it with us. It's great encouragement, and you never know what kind of insights you might give to another. So leave that in the comments below. So from the aspect of friendship, in chapter 1 here, we are kind of introduced to Naomi's backstory. She's come from Judah into the land of Moab to get away from a famine with her husband, Elimelech. I think I'm saying that right. Hopefully I am. If I'm not, I'm sorry. Some of these names are brutal. But anyway, so Naomi and her husband have come into Moab, and then her husband Elimelech dies. And Naomi's left there with her sons, who then marry Moabite women. And for about 10 years, things, go on. Life goes on as it is. And then both of Naomi's husbands die. Now, the first lesson I think we can learn, that we can glean from this story in this chapter, as it pertains to friendship and to our lives, is life is short, right? So the time to make friends is now. We don't need to wait and make excuses or think, I'll do this when I have more time in my schedule, or I'll be more committed to my friends when my kids are older. That's not the way to look at this. Life is short, and we have a limited amount of time that we can make an impact for God's kingdom. And our friendships absolutely impact God's kingdom. We were created for relationship. We were created for relationship with God, but we were also created for relationship with each other. So that's lesson number 1. Life is short, and the time for friends is now. Okay, so lesson number 2 out of chapter 1 is a friend is kind. We can find this in verse 8. So I'm going to pull it up real quick. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me." So Naomi is being kind to them, to Ruth and to Orpah, in her consideration for what their life will look like if they come with her, right? So she's thinking of their needs ahead of her own need for protection as she travels, because traveling alone would be quite dangerous for her, and also for her overall well-being, because Naomi is a widow, and she's an older widow, and in that day and age, widows and women in general did not have the same opportunities for employment and to care for themselves that they do now. So she's putting these young women's interests ahead of herself, which is kind, and she's also acknowledging their kindness to her. So I think that's a great lesson that we can apply to our own friendships, right? Friends are kind. If your friends are not being very kind to you, they're not very good friends, right? So yeah, I'll just leave that one there. Anyway, so the next lesson that I pulled out of this that we can look at is that a friend prays for their friends. And I also took that one out of verse 9. Naomi prays for Ruth and Orpah. She says, "May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." So, a friend is going to stand in the gap for her friends, right? And that's important. We can pray for our friends, and I would go as far as to say we should be praying for our friends. We all need that extra support, and we don't always ask for it, So a friend is somebody who will see that need and lift you up even when you're not expressing it. So I think that's an awesome lesson that I am wanting to apply more often to my own life, and I hope you'll do that too. Okay, so that brings us to lesson number 4 about friendship in chapter 1. There's a lot in chapter 1. Did you guys notice that? Okay, a friend puts others' needs first. So we saw Naomi do this because, as I was just saying, she probably could have used some help on this trip, right? Not to mention the rest of her life. We could all use help and support, and she was alone. So that's a big thing. She put what she viewed as Ruth and Orpah's needs first. But then we know that's turned around, and Ruth puts Naomi's needs before her own. So given the opportunity to go and return to her home and search for another husband in the land that she is accustomed to, she chooses to commit herself to stay with Naomi. Even though, that probably wasn't the easiest path for her, right? She's about to leave her homeland and live as an immigrant in a land that she's never been to before. So that's a lot of commitment, which brings us to the next lesson that I pulled out of chapter 1 here. A friend is committed and follows through. So Ruth followed through with her commitment to go with Naomi and putting Naomi's needs first. So I think, and that's not something that Orpah did, right? She decided that she wasn't going to follow through and stay with Naomi. Instead, she was going to take her opportunity to get out of there and return to her home, and we never hear anything more about her, right? We don't even know what happened to her. So I think a friend is committed and follows through. And that's not always easy to do, right? In friendships, sometimes being committed and following through means not just putting your own needs aside, but even making a sacrifice. I would say it's fair to say that Ruth made a serious sacrifice for Naomi out of her love and her care for Naomi. So I wanted to take a look real quick at, of course, the famous line from Ruth, chapter 1, right? You guys probably know which one I'm going for here, but it's in verse 16 and 17. So Ruth commits herself to Naomi. "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." Wow. That is some commitment, right? This is a woman who knew how to commit to her friend. She must have loved Naomi so much to commit her life to this woman. I mean, what a beautiful, beautiful picture of friendship and of caring and of committing oneself. I think that is so rare. I don't know if it was rare in that day as it is now, but I think it probably was. I think that's rare human trait to find someone that would commit themselves so deeply to you in friendship just because they love you. I think that's amazing. What an awesome and inspiring woman Ruth was. Okay, so that brings me to my last point that we can learn about friends from chapter 1. And that is, a friend sees what you need beyond what you say. A friend sees what you need beyond what you say. I'm not saying that we should be like playing mind games or, trying to make people read our minds or something. But sometimes we don't say exactly what we need, And I think that can be especially true of women, and I think it can be especially true of Christian women. Sometimes we want to give so much that we keep pushing aside our own needs. And I think in this case, Ruth saw that is what Naomi was doing. Naomi was sad. I think it's probably fair to say that she was grieving and probably even depressed. She lost a lot. She lost her whole family, her husband and her sons. She'd lost so much. And Ruth could see beyond what Naomi was saying. Naomi was saying, oh, you go, I'll be fine. And Ruth could see, no, you need me. You need some help. You need someone to support you. And she volunteered to be that friend, that person who would do that. I want to be that kind of friend. Do you? I think that's it's beautiful. It's making me tear up. Okay. So a friend sees what you need beyond what you say. I think that the lesson we can take from that one is to always be trying to operate out of a place of empathy and love. So when we're talking with our friends, trying to put ourselves in their situation and consider, is what they're saying, does that really line up with what you think they're feeling? Because sometimes they're not saying what they feel. And maybe you can be the friend that can step in and just do that little extra something that makes all the difference. So that is all I have for chapter 1. So the discussion question I have for you tonight is, which one of these women in chapter 1, so we have Naomi, we have Ruth, and we have Orpah. Which one of these 3 women do you most relate to, and why? What is it about them that you relate to so well? And that's all I have for this evening. Remember, keep in His Word and keep growing, because the world needs the extraordinary gifts God created in you.